3, 4.
Boys and girls, what you're about to see is a musical threesome that you didn't need.
Hello dear dudes and dudettes, and welcome to the very first episode of A Musical Threesome. And today I'm gonna review 3 releases that will give you, the listener, an idea how to improve your sex life and maybe how to prevent to have a disastrous date the next time you're feeling delusional enough to jump blindly into interpersonal confusion. Again. Let's start with Sutcliffe Jügend's When Pornography is No Longer Enough. I tried to do some research on the question if we're having enough porn based on scientific evidence, but I failed miserably. This power electronics gem describes in detail what to avoid at your date and what you shouldn't do in case you want to leave a first good impression. First of all, read the title. Do not watch porn. Don't endanger your ability to feel surprised every time you see someone's genitals, or you'll meet the miserable fate of the protagonist of this piece of media. I think the message is clear. If you haven't noticed yet, this album doesn't really hold back when it comes to not so tame and, dare I say, rather unfriendly behavior. And if you decide to follow its lead, I'm quite positive that you will end up in jail, destroying any possibility to get to know your date better. Maybe it was the right person all along to abolish your stubborn mindset that you're destined to die alone in some shitty shack out in the woods. And think of the children. Congratulations, you aborted in advance. How do you feel about that? Will your bright future be buried 6 feet under and rotting till the end of times? We'll never know, but what we know is, you're a coward. Getting back on track, for about 30 minutes you'll be trapped, gagged and tortured in a hell of shrieking feedback, noise and demented screams. And even though most of you won't probably enjoy a single second of it and will deny that there's any artistic value, I want to encourage you to reconsider your harsh judgment over it. Ask yourself, do I really have to stab him or her just because he or she couldn't live up to my expectations? Is my pride really that unstable so I couldn't take a no? Can I really not hold back my blue balls or intense dripping and watch the news like any other normal person? There you have it. And besides, how would you put these critical questions and topics in a coherent piece of music? Ha, gotcha. Summing up, it's a good old reminder how to properly practice BDSM without crossing any lines. The 3 components for a successful intercourse are consent, respect, and communication in advance. And the next time you'll forget the safe word, just try to remember that Oklahoma or refrigerator are not words that would ever turn you or your sexual partner on.
Are you sure about that?
And for the love of God, stop choking him or her for a second. There's a reason why people look back on this group with nostalgia, and I gotta admit, I prefer this release over We Spit on Their Graves or Death Mask. In comparison to recent outputs in this genre, it's almost refreshing to have a nice overview of the noise elements, almost in a way that I'd call it simple. In this case, the saying less is more should give you a hint what to expect from When Pornography is No Longer Enough. The wacky vocal performance and the almost goofy swearing will always make me smile when I crank up my old rusty but trusty tape deck to enjoy my evening after a long day of work. Noise is nice. I definitely recommend, and listening to this album kept my trousers cum stain free. Go figure. Next up, Lunar Shadow's 3rd release, The Smokeless Fires. There's one thing that I gotta tell you before I continue, and it's that I can't really call myself a fan of this band. In fact, I actually think they're pretty lame. Despite being a reviewer's favorite, well, apparently, I don't really see people praising them, and I always felt like Lunar Shadow's a hype band without actually having a hype. For a band that receives that many handjobs from scenes, I never heard any regular heavy metal fan mentioning or recommending their work. Anyway, I'm getting ahead of myself. After the decline of the great modern German black thrash wave, the scene kinda fell into a sexual identity crisis where many crowdheads asked themselves, why? No, that's literally what happened. The raw sounds of blasphemous, beer-drinking, toy-tonic succubi and incubi were replaced by modesty, abstinence, deep philosophical discussions, man buns, and triangles. This change of attitude affected all the other subgenres of the German metal scene in that sense that nobody wanted to look primitive or dull anymore. Cigarettes and beer? Haha, you mean incense and wine. Amongst these troubled children, Lunar Shadow also tried desperately to mature and discover and explore their intimate body parts, which clearly can be seen in their music catalog. While the first EP, Triumphant, is clearly a representation of Freud's phallic stage in psychosexual development, I mean, look at the cover, their second endeavor, Far From Light, managed to become an asexual stepping stone in their self-discovery, where Lunar's shadow took some time off from the dilemma around sweat and cum and focused on their favorite hobby, stalactite caves. The new album, however, seems to be the point where the band has left puberty and entered the adult world, even ditching the entire typical heavy metal logo and showing a clear mature approach throughout the album. Following the heavy criticism on the lacking power of the vocal performance on the previous releases, Lunar's shadow replaced the former singer with another bland vocalist. Look, I'm not trying to shit on these guys, but the vocals kinda seem to be the background noise in comparison to the melodic guitar wankery, and to put it quite simple, just like a dry quickie behind the parking lot, it's just serviceable. Nothing to complain about, but in the end lacking of the big, passionate nut. The production, however, is a clear improvement over Far From Light and probably the best aspect of this album. It really raises the question why Lunar Shadow haven't dropped the entire vocals thing yet to enter the lucrative Japanese hentai game music market as soundtrack composers. Just saying, we all gotta pay bills. The guitars remind me of old US power metal with early 90s melodic death lead parts, and while that's impressive on a technical scale, there are plenty of good ideas, it really falls short when it comes to creating memorable songs. The best term to describe the album would be erectile dysfunction. Look, we are all working towards the white goo, but it's a long journey that defines the satisfaction of the sexual partners. If both are coming, nobody complains, and everyone's happy. If only he's the one coming, she's bored. If only she's the one coming, he's sad. Balance is the key. While listening to the Smokeless Fires, I remembered what a good old female friend of mine told me. If the guy eats his food slowly and acts picky, the chances that he will eat out your holiest of the holies are going straight to zero. And let's put it like this, it seems like Lunar Shadow like to eat their soup with a fork. Final verdict. Even though it lasted long, it felt more like a foreplay, dragging on forever, resulting in an immediate super soaker barrel burst at first penetration. Like I said, there are many good ideas, but for me, it's too unfocused and lacking of any punch. If you're into slowly building melodic heavy metal, you'll have the time of your life listening to this album, but for me, well, I'll give it a pass. Last but not least, I'd like to talk about Kero Bonito's latest and arguably most ambitious output yet, the EP Civilization 1. Some of you may ask, hey, wait a second, isn't this EP, which features the amazing Sarah Bonito, all about world downfall? How is that going to improve my sexual life? Well, fair enough, but hear me out. The first two tracks, Battle Lines and When the Fires Come, are indeed dealing with the collapse of society in war and the fatal consequences of climate change. And while that's a cup of espresso with depresso that is served with heavenly vocals of Archangel Sarah Bonito, I can't really wrap my mind around the last song, The River. The prediction of a great flood, resulting in the end of our kind, somehow feels like a forgiving hug of our savior, Sarah Bonito. Maybe we're just a short chapter in the history of nature, but even though our struggles and failures mean nothing in the long term, the small thing called love will remain after the eradication of humanity. We all have sinned, but can't we forgive each other? Isn't love all about accepting the failures of your loved ones? Okay, you know what? Forget about that. I gotta get something off my chest. Okay, Sarah, this one is for you, Sarah. Roses are red, violets are blue. My life was a mess, but then I saw you. You showed me shrimp. You showed me love. You taught me, even though I'm flawed, as a being, I'm enough. And even for all the sins I sought, you still forgave me and cleared my heart. Sarah, my goddess, guide me through the darkness and pain, until I fulfill your expectations and say, I've become less, yet more than before. Your acceptance, your love, showed me a door to leave my existence as a bitter gringo and turn myself into a pink flamingo. I got lost. Sorry about that. Let's continue. Quite frankly, if you couldn't get into Kero Bonito before, this might be the perfect release to start your totally reasonable worship. While previous songs have been more colorful and maybe too overwhelming for some of you, this time Kero Bonito serve a wonderful plate of thoughtful dream pop without losing their electronic sound. Seriously, 10 out of 10, listen to it. I got nothing more to say. So folks, I hope you're feeling ready now to please your crush, lover or whatever you're having and take your sexual ambitions together to the next level. Until then, listen to music and tell me in the comments what you think of the releases, and don't forget to satisfy your partner. See you next time.